Hi, everyone, and welcome to our new podcast, Govs on the Go, the Legacy Series, which features some of the retired professors we have here in the College of Arts and Letters at Austin Peay State University. My name is Dr. Buzz Hoon. I'm the Dean of the College. I'm also the host of today's podcast. And today, my latest guest for the new podcast is another Austin Peay legend, Dr. Jim Diehr. Dr. Diehr, thanks for being on the podcast.
Glad to be here.
So let's give everybody an update. You are an accomplished artist and creator. During your time at Austin Peay, a well-respected professor in the Department of Art, a former administrator. We will reveal some of the details of your tenure here later, but can you provide everyone with an update on what's going on in your life right now?
Well, every morning I get up, and thank goodness that I do get up. And usually we'll have breakfast and a cup of coffee with my sweet wife, and then my studio is about 100 yards down the hill from the house. And so I go to the studio and work unless I have some other honeydews that have to be done. And so I'm trying to stay active with showing my work locally and regionally. And in June, the local community theater is doing a play on Patsy Cline, and I'm doing the art show that will be in the lobby. And so I am now working on a series of paintings, abstract paintings, based on Patsy Cline's titles of her songs, like Crazy.
Okay. So retired as a professor, but not retired as an artist?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Well, let's begin your story with some of the very early days. Where did you grow up, and what kind of things did you do as a young child?
I had the unbelievably fortunate childhood of growing up on about a 680-acre farm, 10 miles from the Kansas border. So I had my horse to ride and cows to feed and all that sort of thing. 4-H was a part of my life. I had a grand champion Hampshire hog.
I'll be.
And so the early education part, I would walk across one of my dad's pastures and crawl through a fence and would be on the school grounds of the one-room country school that I did the first 6 grades in, which was I don't know, kind of a mixed blessing because I'm severely dyslexic. And so the time they consolidated those schools and took us into town, I had a 2nd grade, I think it was, reading level. So by all rights, I should have probably never graduated from high school.
Well, so even though you're going to school, at some point in time, did you show any signs? You must have shown some signs that you had artistic skill. Or when did you first realize that you like creating things?
Well, there again, I think it comes back to the dyslexia. The fact that I had difficulty with language and spelling and writing and so on. So a lot of my communication was visual communication. I could draw. My father he lacked 1 year of finishing his architectural degree. So I had that kind of support or background from home. My mother had a drawing that I did on a church envelope or something or other that I did at 3 years old. So I had started drawing pretty early. And so I think that factor of being able to communicate visually was a very important part, a very early part of my life, and was encouraged by my father and mother until mother decided that I would never be able to earn a living as an artist. But anyway, so that kind of got me through the childhood years. And Dad, I can remember we had a shop, as all farms do. And whenever I wanted something, a toy or a train or whatever, he'd say, well, go down to the shop and make it. So from childhood on, I was making and doing with my hands.
Yeah. So was there a decision sometime in high school where you thought you were going to continue your education? Did you have any plans? Did you have I'm going to become what?
Does any 16-year-old
No, I
have
don't
a
think
plan?
so. Not a realistic one.
So actually, I think all of us probably at one time or another have a teacher that you can go back to and say, okay, this person made a difference in my life. And Mrs. Frazier was my art teacher in high school. In the 8th grade, my high school burned down. And we were going to high school in all of these vacant grocery stores, church annexes, and that sort of thing. Well, the art department was in an old grocery store, and I can remember going in, and Ms. Frazier pointed to what had been an old refrigerator room. And she said, Jim, that can be your art studio. So, at our, I think it was 20th high school reunion, my friend said, you know, Mrs. Frazier lives up on Cherry Street. You need to go see her. So I went up, and it was summertime. And I walked to the door, screen door was open to the house. I knocked on the door, and this little voice from back in the shadows said, Jim Diehr, what are you doing here?
She recognized you.
So Mrs. Frazier was a major factor in me going ahead and doing the art. And so I was, in high school, I was the art geek.
So you found it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So when you went on to school, were you thinking you wanted to be an art teacher? Did you just want to, again, become an artist and then find your way that way?
I probably can only say that I had finished high school, and Dad obviously was not pushing for me to be a farmer, so, or he thought I didn't have enough sense to do it. But anyway, not far away in Pittsburg, Kansas, which was about a 60-mile drive, was Pittsburg State University. And so fall afternoon, he said, let's go over and see if we can get you into college. And I thought, college, girls, yeah. That might be a good thing, you know? So we go over to Pittsburgh, and the first year I was a theater major. It's kind of down your alley. And decided that I was probably much better artist than I was an actor. And so after the first semester of my sophomore year, I had a perfect gentleman's overall grade point average of a 2.0. And I thought, why am I in college? So I quit school, left Missouri with $200 in my pocket, and went to New York City to study art.
Well, so that must have taken either a lot of courage or a lot of ignorance. I'm not sure which is the...
I think the latter
Yeah.
is by far the case. But I knew, and there again, going back to my difficulties with education, that I was not prepared for college. And so the good news is I wound up spending most of the 60s on and off, in and out of New York City and Greenwich Village, and hanging out with some of the neatest artists you'd ever want to know.
Wow, that's quite the experience. And so you grow as an artist, and I'm not sure how the turn gets back into education.
Okay. Being an artist, and of course you have, like actors, you have all of these jobs like waiting tables and what have you in order to have enough to eat. And so I had done all those things. I've been a fry cook in a bowling alley in Brooklyn. And so from there, I decided that I would try to get some of the formal education. So I started at the Art Students League in New York, which is a very well-known professional artist school that go to. And I enrolled at Pratt Institute, where I had enrolled as a major in product and industrial and product design, thinking that, okay, the fine arts I probably wouldn't really be able to make a living at, so I was doing this. Well, it was very expensive, and working nights and whatever I could get. At some point I had lost all my jobs and found myself homeless and sort of living in the subways of New York City. Well, that went on for about, I don't know, a couple of weeks, and I decided that this is not really going to really work out. So I went down to Whitehall Street, and the Marines and the Navy and the Air Force all wanted 4 years, and the Army only wanted 3. Well, Vietnam was just coming onto the scene at that point. So I joined the Army, and 3 years there in the Army, and airborne infantry, and did my stint in Vietnam, and went, at that time you could join for a job, a particular kind of job. You could also enlist for a location. So I had put down Europe. So at that point then I was transferred to Germany and finished out my career in the Army in Germany, and which was wonderful because I could take weekends and go to the Louvre and hang out in the Louvre for a week or whatever time I had off from the Army and get to see the art of Europe. And so that was a good thing.
So then after the Army, you must have...
Well, then the Vietnam GI Bill came out.
Yep.
And I could actually afford to go to school. And so the Vietnam GI Bill put me through 4 college degrees. And I finished my bachelor's degree, Bachelor of Fine Arts and Studio Art in Sculpture and Ceramics, and a master's degree in sculpture. And then at finishing my master's degree, I was hired to teach. This is at Pittsburg State University. I was hired to teach, and so I was head of the product design area based on the information I'd learned at Pratt Institute in New York. And so I was the head of the product design, and went ahead and got a specialist degree in education, industrial arts education actually. And from there, at my 7th year of teaching at the college level, my dean said, you got a sabbatical. And I said, oh, that's cool. What shall I do? He said, you need to go get a doctorate. So I went to the University of Missouri and entered there. And so I did my PhD at the University of Missouri, and went back and taught at Pittsburgh for a total of 12 years. Then my sweet wife decided that it was a terrible winter and we needed to go somewhere warmer. So I started applying for jobs, and the chairmanship of the art department at Austin Peay was open, and I came to Clarksville and interviewed and got the job and came here as chair of the art department.
And what year was that?
This would have been 1982.
1982. So one of the things that you do very early on is you created the Sculpture Gateway, which is in front of Browning Building in 1986. Can you talk about that project?
Okay, Bob Riggs was president, and Lamar Alexander was governor, and there was Homecoming 86. And so Bob called me up and said, we need to do something. Why don't you make a sculpture or something? And I said,
no pressure.
Okay. And I got a whole summer teaching credit for for that sculpture. That's what paid for that sculpture.
Okay.
I got a summer off to build a sculpture piece for Austin Peay, and had a great time doing it. And of course, it's there's all the educational symbolism that's a part of it. And so it's 86 feet back from the front gate of the university, Homecoming 86. There's a negative space in it, the shape of a human being, which symbolizes the students coming and going from the university through the gateway. And the cauldron on top is the light of learning, and the books on the side are the reservoir of learning, and so on.
So in a project like that, do you just, do you start with an idea and just continue to layer on like that? Because the 86 feet back, I understand that's a good starting point, but all the negative space, the other imagery that you add in there, does it just keep coming through your creativity?
Well, I sort of picked a spot, and so I went out and I sat there in front of the main administration building, which is a knockoff on Liberty Hall in Philadelphia. And I'm thinking, Liberty Hall, liberty, learning. How does learning, help us with what we're trying to do in this world? And so kind of going from that, I thought Liberty Bell. So I don't know whether you remember the old Christmas decorations that were corrugated paper that you could open up
and fold around.
And when they folded around, but the piece itself on profile looked like a bell. So the two sides of the bell is the basic shape of that sculpture. So the bell, the clearing of the mind so that the learning can take place. So it started out with Liberty Hall, the Liberty Bell, learning gives us liberty, and so on.
Wow. Okay. That kind of thought never crosses my mind. That's a great artist example. Also, during your time here, you took, which I think is another remarkable sort of thing in your academic career, you took another sabbatical, this time from Austin Peay, and you decided to go to China to be a guest lecturer. Why? And tell us how that was.
Okay. When I came, one of the areas in the art department that needed help, or that I could fit into and had the education for, was pottery. And so I really kind of organized a more kind of professional approach to pottery, and was doing that sort of thing. Well, the history of pottery, China, it all connects together, and so I thought, well, I could actually get a chance to go over and see where some of this Ming Dynasty stuff came from. And so part of the deal is that I would have a foreign affairs officer that traveled with me on weekends or when I had time off, and we could go to some of the local or regional potteries and see how that was done, and just sort of kind of a busman's holiday in that sense, that going to that. So that was one semester, and had a great time, wonderful learning experience to get completely out of your comfort zone and go into, because I spoke no Chinese, still speak no Chinese, and I can say hello, ni hao. We were on the wall in Xi'an, and on the wall that surrounded the city. And I can remember walking down the stairs to get down to street level, and this group of children were coming up, and every one of them would say hello, and I would say ni hao. And so that's my big Chinese speaking experience.
Oh, so it was a good learning experience for you.
Oh, absolutely.
After your time as department chair, you went back to teaching pottery because you served as department chair for a time. You served as president of Faculty Senate. A very notable achievement was working with Dr. Fott, as well as Joe Filippo, David Till, on the grant for the Center of Excellence for the Creative Arts, or CECA. Did you have any idea, did all of you at that period of time know that kind of impact that Seeker would have on the education of our students?
I think we hoped for it. Well, I can remember when I took the proposal from Bob Riggs for the four of us to write a grant that would create something for the fine arts, because Bob Riggs, who was president at the time, he said the strength in one of the standout strengths of the university is the fine arts, which of course was music to our ears. And so going from that to where we are today, you know, there was all the apprehension about, well, is it going to continue to be funded? Is this just a political ploy that somebody's going to use and then it's going to disappear? Some of my faculty said, I don't know why you're going to all this work, it'll never happen. So anyway, it did happen, and it has continued, and I think it's done wonderful things for helping students to see, bring in chairs of excellence, artists that can give us information and experiences that we wouldn't have ever had otherwise. It's given faculty an opportunity to do things on their own and develop their own arts. And so I think, yes, we probably did not realize, we only hoped that it would become what it is today. So.
Now, you go back to being, as I said, somebody that's a professor teaching pottery. How did you become the dean of the college?
Well, the organization of the university at that time, there was a College of Arts and Sciences, which was a huge, it just pretty much took in everything. And so the president President Hoppe decided that we were going to take the arts and letters out of the sciences, separate this, and then we'd have two colleges. And this is right after I'd been president of the Faculty Senate. And somehow, well, I think through Gaines Hunt, who is a close friend, and he was chair of the agriculture department at the time, had sort of recommended that they talk to me about it. And so the provost came over, called me up, said, you know, can I come over and talk to you? And this is the summertime, and I was working in the pottery. And he came over and he said, well, we're going to start this new college, and we need an interim dean, somebody that will do it. And he said, would you like to do that? Well, I was sort of dumbstruck by the whole thing. I was like, really? And so, sure, yeah. Well, as a department chair, I'd had some problems with administrative help in the department. I said, well, is there somebody that can help? You know, or is there going to be a secretary? Am I going to have help with this, or administrative help? And he said, yeah, you want to go over and meet her. She's over in Harnett Hall. So of course, I probably had on Bermuda shorts, I don't know. Anyway, had clay all over me.
An art professor, typical art professor.
Yeah. So I walked in here into the office, and this lovely woman was sitting behind the desk, and she kind of raised an eyebrow and looked at me, and her name was Debbie Sharon. I'm thinking of the look on her face because I'm sure that she thought that I was some street person that they had gotten off the street and brought in as a joke.
That's right.
This is going to be your new boss. But consequently, it happened. I became the interim dean, and the first year search did not result in hiring anyone. And so they had a second year search, and several of the faculty suggested that I go ahead and put my name in for permanent dean, for the first dean of the College of Arts and Letters. And so I did, and amazingly, I got the job.
So what did you learn about yourself as a dean that maybe you hadn't learned as an artist, as a professor, as a chair?
I think, I'm not sure I learned that much about myself. myself as what I learned about working with others, and what wonderful people, the faculty and students, you know, of course you're dealing with students as well as the faculty, but all of these brilliant people with marvelous talents. And when you're in your own little world teaching in the classroom, you're kind of limited to that little environment. But when you get into a position where you're working with all these other faculty who have all these other talents and knowledge and experiences, and it broadens your own horizons so much to look out and say, how lucky I am to have this job and be working with these people and doing this and helping students learn and build a life for themselves. So, yeah.
Absolutely, well said. So after your time as dean, you go back to faculty for I think another 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then before you decide to retire. I know you've been involved with so many other things in your life. I think you said you designed the house that you and Jane live in. Is that right?
Yes.
So what kind of things are you most proud of that you are glad that you had a hand in?
Well, like my colleague said a few minutes ago, family. It all comes back to that support that you have with and together with your family. So having family and watching your children and working with my wife of 55 years, and just, you know, that's the big part. And then of course career and anything else that kind of falls out from that is wonderful too. So.
Yeah, you've been very blessed and still very productive. And I've been to your studio. I've seen how much you continue to do. As you said, being involved with the rock scene, their production, I think that's great. You know, do you ever imagine there's a part where you're not going to be creating, that you're going to not produce something?
When I can't lift my hand
You physically just can't do it.
Yeah. Well, I just the local museum has a fundraiser each year called Flying High, and I just put on the shelf. I was asked to do a painting to contribute to the museum to raise money for what they do, and so I just put on the shelf the painting that I did for Flying High, which will be auctioned off. And traditionally through the years, artists that they ask to do this will do a building downtown, you know, Franklin or the courthouse or the museum or whatever. So I thought, what are we going to do here that's a little different? So I imagined myself standing on top of the F&M Bank and looking up the river, the Cumberland River, to where the fort is up on the hill now, and where the Red River comes into it. But I imagined it before Clarksville was here. So this is pre-European. My painting is a landscape of pre-European Clarksville.
Wow, that's awesome. So I'm so glad that we've had this opportunity to talk about your story, Jim. The very first dean of the College of Arts and Letters here at Austin Peay. I feel just so appreciative to have you, not only as a friend, but a guest on today's podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And thanks to all of our listeners and viewers out there for continuing to support not only Austin Peay, but also the College of Arts and Letters here at Austin Peay. Make sure to continue to join us on our other podcast. And till next time, stay safe, take care, and God bless. Jim Diehr, everyone.